everyone, hope you all doing well. Welcome back to our channel. In this video, I'm going to showcase how you can extract logs from Log Analytics Workspace using API. And I will be using Postman, PowerShell, and Python. I will be showcasing this with all these three different scenarios. You can choose one as per your requirement. Okay. So what you see now is one of my machine where I have Postman installed, and as you can see, I'm sending a specific query to extract logs from my workspace. The same part is something that I've covered with my PowerShell script as well, that will be available in the repo. And the same concept is something that I've covered with Python as well. So this script that you see right now is a Python script that will extract the data and send the response in the form of an email. So you can see right now it's 114 and this is my response which is being sent. Okay. Now, before I go ahead and show you and explain every component related to this particular script or the PowerShell script or how exactly things are working with Postman, let's just understand why you should know this. Now, this is an example that I have given in my last video as well, that as a part of daily health monitoring activity, or let's say any activity that you are doing from operation standpoint, where you need some information to be sent to a specific team altogether, let's say on a daily basis or on a weekly basis, then you can use these scripts to schedule that task. Now, fundamentally speaking, whatever I'm going to show is something that's available through Logic app as well. So fundamentally, you can extract data through Azure Monitor connector and then get it routed to a specific mailbox. However, knowing API is something that is going to help you not only with report automation, but with n number of different scenarios. So let's say you have a solution wherein you want to extract some data and then provide analysis on that particular data. In this case, you must know how the log extraction API work. Okay. So that's the reason why for this particular video, we are going to use log extraction API and then one additional method of sending that response in a form of an email using Microsoft Graph. However, with this being said, for the second step, you can perform any analysis, whatever you want. Okay. So when it comes to prerequisite, the very first thing that you need is an Enter ID application. Now, in the last couple of videos, I've shown you how you should go ahead and create an application, but I'll just give you a quick recap in this particular video as well. If you already know that, then you can skip the next 3 or 4 minutes. Okay. Then your application should also have log analytics reader permission, because this is something which is required to read data. Then if you want to send an email, then mail.send is required. Any which ways, I'm going to show you that, how you can add those permissions. And lastly, you should have Postman, PowerShell, and Python, depending upon your requirement. Okay. So now let me switch to my browser where we'll go ahead and create an application in Microsoft Entra ID, and we will grant the respective permissions. So right now I've clicked on app registration and I'm going to click on new registration, and here I'm going to name it as, let's say, log extraction. Okay. And then here I'm going to choose this option of web, and I'm going to give a very common value, which I give always, which is localhost. And then I'm going to click on register. So as of now, I am registering an application which will be used for log extraction. Once the application is registered, then the very first thing that you need is client ID. I'll quickly copy this value, and then I'll go and click on this option of certificates and secrets, and then I'll click on new client secret, and then I'll click on add. I'm going to copy this particular secret value as well. So as of now, we have created the application, we copied the client ID and client secret. The next thing is going ahead and granting that application a specific permission altogether. Now I'm going to click on this option of add a permission, and then I'm going to click on Azure Service Management, and then I'm going to grant user impersonation. As of now, I have given the privilege for user impersonation, but still no role has been assigned. Okay. I'll again click on add a permission, and this time Microsoft Graph, application permission, mail.send. Only follow this process if you want to send an email. If you don't want to send an email, then the log extraction part will work absolutely fine with this particular permission. Now, once I've clicked on mail.send, I'll click on this option of grant admin consent, and then I'll click on yes. So as of now, I have added the privileges for this particular application to access a specific API. In terms of Microsoft Graph, the permission is already granted to an application. However, this permission is a delegated permission, so we need a role assignment as well. So for that, I'll go to my subscription, and then I will select my subscription. And here I'm going to click on Access Control IAM, and then I will click on Add. It's working slightly slow. Add role assignment. And then here I'm going to search for the permission which is required, which is Log Analytics Reader. Make sure you give this permission. Log Analytics Reader. Next. Sorry, here I have to select member. And here I'm going to type log hyphen extraction. So this is the application that we have just created. I'll click on select, next, permanent assignment, review and assign. Perfect. So as of now, we have created the application. We have client ID and client secret, and we have also assigned the role which is required to access the data. Now, before I go ahead and show you all this through Postman or PowerShell or Python, a very important concept that is moreover related to requesting token itself, and that is for majority of the workload script that I've shown till this particular point, they were usually related to Azure and the resources. So that's the reason why we have always used management.co.windows.net. However, when it comes to log extraction, then in this scenario, the resource type should be https api.loganalytics.io. This is the actual change which should exist. Okay. Now, let me just quickly explain what exactly is going to happen and how we are going to achieve this entire use case. So we will use either Postman, PowerShell, or Jupyter Notebook, and then we will send a request to a token endpoint of Entra ID, from which we will get a response, and that will be the token itself. Then this token will be used to send a post query that incorporates the actual query, or let's say the data that we are looking for. So whenever we go ahead and try to search for some data, there is actually a query that you are typing. So in this request, you have to send that query. Okay. Then depending upon the query, the log analytics API will respond with raw data. Now, when I say raw data, what do I mean by that? Is, let's say if I go to Postman and show you this response. So what you see here right now is actually the definition of the table itself, the columns, right? And then if I'll scroll down, there will be a section of rows that will show me the actual data. So in this case, what you have to do is you have to develop a function that can extract that raw data and make it presentable in a form of a table. And then we'll attach that data into a specific report and get that routed through an email. This is exactly what we are going to do. Okay. So now let me show you everything from scratch. So here, what I'll do is I'll click on new request. Okay. And the very first option is authorization, where I'm going to select OAuth 2.0. Now here, since it's the very first request, or let's say new request, this field is blank. However, this will be populated the moment we click on use token. Okay. So don't make any change here in the header prefix. Scroll down. Now, the very first option that you have to populate is access token URL, which is basically something that can be found on the portal itself. And I'll close this and I'll go to Microsoft Entra ID, and then I'll click on app registration. And here I'm going to click on this option of endpoints. Now, this is the endpoint that you need, which is OAuth 2.0 token endpoint. And you have to just copy this value and come back to your Postman and paste this value here. Okay. Now here I have to provide the client ID and client secret. So let me just copy the client ID, which we have just created, and paste that value here. And similarly, I'll do it for client secret as well. So let me just now copy the client secret and give it here. Okay. Now I'll scroll down, and in the resource type, in the token request section, in the resource type, api.loganalytics.io. is something that should exist instead of management.co.windows.net, the one that I was showing you in the deck itself. And then here you have to select send in request body and then click on get a new access token, and perfect. The authentication is working as expected. Now, the moment I'll click on use token, the token will be populated here. Okay. Now let's come to the next part, which is of sending the actual request to a specific endpoint. So for that, what you need is the workspace ID. Okay. So let me break down this URL for you folks. Okay. So let me remove this. Yeah. So now you see this first section. It is not going to be changed in any scenario. It's api.loganalytics.azure.com. Then you have V1 workspaces. And then here you have to provide the workspace ID. Now the workspace ID is the actual ID of the workspace for which you're trying to query the data. So let's say if I search for log analytics workspace and I go to my workspace, and you can see 5044, and this is exactly what I have mentioned here. Okay. So I'll come back here. You can see api.loganalytics.azure.com v1 workspace, then my workspace ID and query. Now here in the body, I have to actually send the query for which I want a response. Okay. So let me also copy this from here, and I'll come back to this particular section and paste this value here. Now, just to let you know, this query can be anything, whatever you want. Okay. So let me show you this with an example. Okay. So I'll close this. Let me run this query first. Let me remove this. Let me run this query first, just to see from where all I'm getting the data. Okay. So let's say I'll change this query. I'll do office activity where time generated is greater than equal to, let's say, 48 hours. Okay. And let's say now this is the query for which I want log extraction to happen. Okay. So I'll copy this and I'll come back to my Postman and I'll paste this value here. Now, this is the keyword that should exist because this is where you're defining the query, and this is my actual query. Now change from get to post and then click on send. Perfect. So as you can see, I am now getting the response. Now, let's say you tried it for the very first time and it gives you insufficient permissions. All you have to do is wait for 5-10 minutes. That's it. Now, if at all there is any issue with the permission itself, then you might not get the response. However, if you have assigned the permission of log analytics reader, just wait for 5-10 minutes and you will get this response. Okay. So now if I'll scroll down, you can see still the table definition is going on, and then there will be a specific section that shows me the rows. Just give me a minute. Yeah, you can see this is where I'm getting my data. Okay. Now let me do something. I'll copy this query from here, and then I'll go back to my PowerShell and let me just replace this query. Okay. And now let's just export this as office activity. Okay. Activity. Now let me just run this. It'll take a couple of seconds, but it should show me all the information. So as of now, it's rendering the objects, which is basically all the set of data which I'm receiving. And then at the end, it will go ahead and create an object named as office activity. Perfect. So it's completed now. And let me just go to this location. And you can see it's showing me office activity. If I open this particular file, I'll get the actual data, which exist. Okay. So this is how fundamentally it works. Now let me show you all this with the actual script in terms of how you should use it. Okay. So for that, let me go back to the browser. Okay. And here you have to go to this folder of Log Analytics Workspace and then click on PowerShell and copy this script as it is. No change required. So I'll copy this and I'll come back to my machine and I will paste this value here. Okay. Now, all you have to do is you have to update the details. So in line number 6, where it says update your domain, just add your own tenant domain. In my case, it is conceptswork.in. Then it is asking for client ID. Okay. Just copy paste the client ID which you have just created. Okay. So I'm going to copy the same and then I will add that value here. And then it is asking for client secret, copy the same again and update client secret. Now no change here, no change here, nothing. Nothing has to be changed for this particular section. Here it is asking for workspace ID. So just go ahead and copy your workspace ID either from the Postman or from Azure portal, wherever you find one. I'll paste it here. Now you can see this is my query. If I want, I can change it, or you should provide the query that you want to access. Now, for all obvious reasons, I will not suggest PowerShell because the moment you will include any single inverted commas, it will cause issue. That's the reason why I suggest you to use PowerShell 1, because the moment you write complex query, PowerShell gets slightly messy. Okay. Now, absolutely no change required. That's it. I'm going to click on run. However, let's just change the table name. Okay. Graph activity. Once you have provided your workspace ID, your client ID and client secret, everything will work as expected. Okay. Now here, let me just scroll up and there was a specific error. Let me just see what exactly it is showing me. Okay. So there was an additional space here, which was causing issue when I was copying it. And I think this is something which happened in my last video as well. So make sure this section shows you as properly commented. And then let me just clear the screen and run it again. And perfect. You can see there is no error. So now if I come back to my folder and open graph activity, perfect. You can see it's a new report altogether with less entries, because if you guys noticed, here I have mentioned top 10 by time generated. Okay. Now let me show you the same for Python as well. So this is the Python script, which is again available in the same folder. And let's just copy each and every step as it is. I'll come back to my machine. And here, let me open Jupyter Notebook. Okay, so this was something which was running before. Let me just create a brand new notebook and show you this from scratch. Okay. Come on. Perfect. So this is my first part and let it run. Okay, I think it's still loading. Perfect. So now it's showing me the results. I'll again come back to my browser and copy the second part, which is importing modules. Okay. So this is a section where it will go ahead and check if a specific module is available or not. If it is not available, then it will give you the command which you can run to install that particular module. Here it is importing all the modules which are required. And then the next section is to go ahead and query data. So if you remember in my last video as well, I was showing all these steps end to end just to make sure that when you run the script which I have provided, there has to be no issues. Okay. Now it is asking me for client ID, which I will copy from here itself. I'll copy this value. I'll paste it here. And then it is asking me for client secret. I'll copy this. And I'll again come back and paste it here. Perfect. So as of now, it is requesting token for log analytics workspace. And you can see that here I have mentioned api.loganalytics.io. Perfect. So it is giving me an error. Line 3, column 1. The same mistake which I have done in my last video as well. Anyways, this is where you have to type your domain conceptswork.in. And now you can see it's completed and I have the access token. So I'll again come back to my script and copy this particular section. And I'll paste it here. Now, before this section can execute, what you need is workspace ID that you have to give here. Okay. So I will copy the workspace ID and I will paste it here. I'll run this part again and then this part. And let's just wait for a while because here exactly I am querying the data and I'm also converting that into a data frame. Okay. So let's just see whether we are getting the data or not. And you can see this is the actual data which is coming through response. Okay. Now the next part is to go ahead and send this data through an email. Or if you want, you can use this line as well to save that data. Now, if you remember in my last video, there was a very specific section of separating these two capabilities because there could be scenarios wherein, let's say you don't want email part. Okay. So then starting from here, you should not use any of the other component, but if at all it is required for you, you can use it. So here I'm going to update my domain, which is conceptswork.in. And the next section is client ID and client secret. So I'll just scroll up and copy these two lines as it is and then paste them here. So now my client ID and client secret is same. And then here you can see the resource is graph.microsoft.com. Let me just request a token. And as you can see, I also have graph token now. Okay. Now the last and the final step is to go ahead and send this data in the form of an email. For that, I'll copy this last section and I'll come back to my machine and paste it here. And then I'm just going to update the details which are required. Okay. So here I have to update the email of the user account whose mailbox will be used to send an email. Okay. In this particular section, I've mentioned comment here, so you can review that as well. And then I'll scroll down and mention the one to whom this email has to be sent. Okay. So it is conceptswork.onmicrosoft.com. And then here as well, I have to mention sender email. So soc1 at conceptswork.in. And then I will just initiate this step and let me see if it is completed. Perfect. So it is completed now. So it's around 158 and 158. You can see I am getting this data. So this is how you can use Postman, PowerShell, and Python to interact with log analytics APIs. Now for PowerShell, I have not incorporated the method to send an email because I know that you will encounter issues. However, that's not the case with Python. With Python, you have all these different capabilities available. And with this being said, it's not only about Log Analytics Workspace. You can go to this repo and go ahead and check for the scripts that are available for Sentinel as well, because we are going through the playlist for Sentinel API as well. So both of these are kind of interconnected, and that's why I'm posting the scripts for both the platforms. Okay. So this was all about knowing how to export logs from Azure Log Analytics Workspace. In the next video, I'm going to showcase how you can achieve the same scenario through Logic app. So if you think that this channel is helping you to learn anything new, please feel free to subscribe and share this video with your technical community. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time.